Doris sat on a small stool in their dimly lit living room, her mother's soft voice breaking through the silence of the night. "My daughter," her mother said, her eyes glistening with hope, "education is your way out of this life. If you work hard, you can become someone great." Doris nodded, holding the old notebook in her hands. She knew her mother spoke from her heart, and she had vowed to make her proud. Life in their small Anambra home was hard. Her father, a tireless farmer, barely made enough to keep them fed, while her mother sold vegetables in the market to pay her school fees. Every night, after the day's chores, Doris would sit down with her best friend, Deborah, under the flickering light of a kerosene lamp. Deborah was her neighbor and partner in everything, reading, laughing, and dreaming. The two girls would often take turns quizzing each other, their laughter echoing into the quiet night. "You're going to be a doctor, Doris," Deborah teased one evening. "And I'll be your lawyer when someone sues you for being too smart." Doris laughed, but deep down, she believed it too. With every book she read, she felt closer to escaping the poverty that had gripped her family for long. One day, their school principal announced an exciting opportunity, a prestigious scholarship competition open to the best students. The prize: full funding for their university education. The announcement set the school buzzing, and Doris felt her heart race. "Deborah, we have to win this," Doris whispered during lunch. "This is our chance." The two friends threw themselves into preparation. They spent hours in the library, poring over textbooks and solving past questions. They encouraged each other when the pressure felt overwhelming and pushed each other to keep going. The day of the competition arrived, and the tension in the air was palpable. Doris wore her only neat dress, and Deborah held her hand tightly as they walked into the examination hall. The questions were challenging, but Doris's determination burned brighter than ever. Weeks later, the results were announced during a school assembly. The principal's voice boomed through the crowd, calling out the names of the scholarship winners: Doris Okofor and Deborah Nwick. The crowd erupted into cheers as the two friends hugged each other tightly, tears streaming down their faces. They had done it. Their hard work had paid off, and their future was beginning to look brighter. Deborah often sat by the window of their small house, staring at the sky, wondering what her mother might have looked like. She had no memories of her. All she knew were the stories her father told her when she was younger. Her mother had passed away shortly after Deborah's birth, falling victim to an illness they couldn't afford to treat. Her father, a quiet but hardworking man, had taken up the role of both parents, doing everything he could to provide for Deborah. He worked as a laborer on construction sites, returning home each evening with tired eyes but a warm smile for his daughter. Deborah's life wasn't easy, but she had learned to find joy in the little things: her father's stories, the cool evening breeze, and, most of all, her friendship with Doris. The two girls were inseparable, bonded not just by their shared dreams but also by their struggles. Despite the emptiness of not having a mother, Deborah carried herself with an inner strength that inspired those around her. She would tell Doris, "I may not have my mother's arms to hold me, but I have her spirit to guide me." Her father often reminded her that education was her only way out of poverty. "Deborah," he would say, his voice steady but firm, "you have to be strong and focused. If you work hard in school, you can change our story. You can live the life your mother would have wanted for you." Those words stayed with Deborah, driving her to excel. She poured her energy into her studies, refusing to let her circumstances define her. When the scholarship competition was announced, she didn't just see it as an opportunity, she saw it as her only chance to honor her father's sacrifices and her mother's memory. The day before their departure to the University of Benin was filled with mixed emotions for both Doris and Deborah. In Doris's home, her mother prepared a modest farewell meal, her hands moving swiftly as she cooked, occasionally pausing to wipe away a tear. That evening, Doris sat on the same small stool in their living room where her mother had often given her advice. This time was no different. Her mother took Doris's hands in hers, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "My daughter," she began, "you've worked so hard to get here. Remember, this is the beginning of your journey. Don't let bad friends distract you. Focus on your studies, be prayerful, and remember where you come from. This is your chance to change our story. Make us proud. I will, Mama, Doris replied, her voice trembling but filled with determination. I'll focus, and I'll make you and Papa proud. Meanwhile, at Deborah's home, her father sat her down in their small living room. Though his face was calm, his eyes reflected the weight of his words. Deborah, he said, his voice deep and steady, you've made me proud, but remember, this is just the beginning. At the university, there will be many distractions. Don't mix with the wrong crowd, and stay away from men who will try to deceive you. Your education is your priority. Promise me you remain focused. I promise, Papa, Deborah said, her voice firm. I'll focus on my studies and stay true to my goals. At the University of Benin, Doris and Deborah quickly discovered that life as students came with its own set of challenges. As new girls in the school, they were shy and reserved, choosing to keep to themselves. The large campus was bustling with activity, and everywhere they turned, they saw students in fashionable clothes, flaunting expensive gadgets, and sporting stylish hairstyles. Doris and Deborah, however, knew they couldn't afford such luxuries. Their focus was on survival and their studies. They often sat under the shade of a big tree near their hostel, taking turns plaiting each other's hair. Doris was especially skilled at making neat cornrows, while Deborah enjoyed experimenting with simple styles that made them look presentable without costing a penny. One afternoon, as Deborah carefully parted Doris's hair with a small comb, she sighed. Sometimes I wish we could afford those fancy hairstyles I see other girls wearing, she said, glancing at a group of students who walked by, laughing and tossing their long, braided hair. Doris smiled faintly. We don't need all that, Deborah. Remember why we're here. It's not about how we look, it's about what we achieve. Deborah nodded, her friend's words comforting her. You're right. One day, we'll look back at all this and be proud of how far we've come. Paying their bills was another uphill battle. Despite winning the scholarship, there were still other expenses, accommodation, textbooks, and daily meals that the scholarship didn't cover. Doris's parents and Deborah's father sent what little money they could scrape together, but it was never enough. In their second semester, Doris and Deborah's lives began to take different turns. While Deborah stayed focused on her studies and their shared dreams, Doris found herself drawn into a new world she had never imagined. It all started one afternoon when Doris was sitting alone in the campus garden, flipping through her notes. Linda, a tall, confident girl with long braided hair and a commanding presence, approached her. Linda was part of a notorious trio, Linda, Sandra, and Anita, known across campus as the Pink Ladies. They were always dressed in pink whenever they are going to night party, wore the latest fashion, and were seen leaving campus in expensive cars almost every night. Hi, Doris, right? Linda said with a bright smile. I've seen you around. You seem like a cool girl, but you're always so serious. Don't you ever have fun? Doris hesitated, unsure how to respond. I guess I'm just focused on school. Linda laughed, a smooth and easy laugh that seemed to draw people in. Come on. Life isn't all about books. Why don't you join me and my girls tonight? We are going to Club Mirage, it's the best spot in town. You'll love it. Doris shook her head. I don't think I can. Don't be boring, Linda interrupted, placing a hand on her shoulder. You're smart, you're pretty, and you deserve to enjoy yourself. Just one night, okay? If you don't like it, you never have to come again. That evening, Doris told Deborah about Linda's invitation. Deborah's face darkened with concern. Doris, you can't go with them. Everyone knows the Pink Ladies are trouble. They party all night, disrespect lecturers, and barely pass their exams. This isn't you. But Doris shrugged, brushing off Deborah's warning. It's just one night, Deborah. I'll be fine. Besides, I'm tired of always struggling and missing out. Don't I deserve to enjoy myself, too? Against Deborah's protest, Doris joined the Pink Ladies that night. Linda and the others welcomed her with open arms, dressing her in a sparkly pink outfit and taking her to Club Mirage. The loud music, flashing lights, and glamorous crowd overwhelmed Doris at first, but soon she found herself dancing and laughing, swept up in the excitement. The next morning, Doris returned to their hostel, exhausted but exhilarated. Deborah was waiting for her, arms crossed, her face a mix of worry and disappointment. "So, how was it? Did it change your life?" "Stop judging me," Doris snapped, tossing her bag onto her bed. "You don't understand. For once, I felt like I belonged somewhere." Deborah shook her head. "What about your studies? What about everything we've worked for?" "Doris, please don't let them distract you. Those girls don't care about anyone but themselves." But Doris didn't listen. One night out turned into 2, then 3, until she was clubbing with the pink ladies almost every night. She started skipping classes, turning in assignments late, and neglecting her studies. Deborah watched helplessly as her best friend began to drift away. "Doris, this isn't you," she pleaded one evening. "You're better than this?" "Maybe I'm tired of being better," Doris shot back. "I'm tired of struggling, Deborah. You don't understand how it feels to want more." Deborah's heart ached, but she refused to give up on her friend. "Doris, the people who truly care about you are the ones who want you to succeed, not the ones who drag you down. Please, think about your future." But Doris had already become entangled in the flashy world of the pink ladies, blinded by their lifestyle and the allure of their rebellious freedom. She didn't realize that every choice she made was pulling her further away from the dreams she had once shared with Deborah, and closer to a path she might not be able to escape. Doris's life took a darker turn when she met Emeka. He was charming, confident, and dressed in a way that made him look wealthy. Emeka claimed to own a luxurious apartment, but in reality, he was squatting with a friend who helped him maintain the lie. Doris, caught up in her new lifestyle and craving the validation she never had, fell for him completely. Deborah noticed the change in her friend almost immediately. "Doris, I don't trust that guy," she warned. "Something about him doesn't seem right. Why do you always have to judge me?" Doris snapped, rolling her eyes. "Not everyone has to live a boring, perfect life like you, Deborah." Unknowingly to Doris, Emeka's charm was a mask for his true intentions. He made her believe he was deeply in love with her, but his affection came with conditions. Each time Doris became pregnant, Emeka would convince her to take pills to end the pregnancy, saying, "We're not ready yet. We have to think about the future." For 3 consecutive times, Doris followed his advice, but the emotional and physical toll began to weigh on her. Deborah noticed her growing fatigue and sadness, but every time she tried to help, Doris pushed her away. The 4th time Doris discovered she was pregnant, the pills didn't work. Panicking, Emeka decided to take drastic measures. He arranged a meeting with an abortionist, who initially refused because the pregnancy was already 5 months along. But after Emeka promised extra money, the abortionist reluctantly agreed. The procedure was done early in the morning in a dingy, hidden clinic. Doris felt weak and in pain but convinced herself it was worth it to keep Emeka happy. When she returned to her hostel, Deborah greeted her with concern. "Doris, where have you been? You look pale. Are you okay?" Deborah asked, noticing her friend's discomfort. "I'm fine," Doris muttered, brushing past her to sit on the bed. But minutes later, she gasped as blood began pouring from her body. "Deborah." Doris cried weakly, her voice trembling. "I don't feel right." Deborah froze in shock as the blood poured on the floor, then sprang into action. "Somebody help," she screamed, running to alert their neighbors. Doris collapsed before her eyes, her strength fading rapidly. She was rushed to the hospital, her body cold and her breathing shallow. The school authorities called her parents, who arrived in tears, desperate for answers. Doris's mother held her hand tightly, praying and begging her to stay alive. But it was too late. Despite the doctor's efforts, Doris gave up the ghost shortly after arriving at the hospital. Deborah stood in the hospital, her eyes filled with tears, as she wept for her dead friend Doris. Doris's mother wailed uncontrollably, clutching her lifeless daughter as her father stared blankly at the ground, grief etched into his face. The news spread across the university like wildfire, a cautionary tale of poor decisions and misplaced trust. Emeka, upon hearing of Doris's death, disappeared without a trace, leaving behind the wreckage of a life lost too soon. Doris's tragic story serves as a powerful lesson about the choices we make and the people we trust. In life, it's easy to get distracted by temporary pleasures, flashy appearances, and false promises, but true success requires focus, patience, and determination. If you find the video helpful, kindly subscribe to support us, share the video to more people and also like the video. Thank you very much for watching. See you in my next episode.